Johan, the next question is of utmost frustration to all parties involved. The connection of the rates account. 6 months after I've bought the property, I'm living, I've settled in, my power gets cut. I've been paying my water and lights, and when I pick up the phone, the answer is your rates and taxes has not been connected. Please help, Johan.
Amore, yes. I need not tell the participants that the City Council, I think, unfortunately, has become a bit of a frustration for everybody. That is no exception to the rule with regards to us as transferring attorneys as well. Just to give the participants a bit of an idea how the rates and taxes transfer works. Together with the transfer of the property, we obviously request a clearance certificate from the City Council, and we need to pay clearance figures to the City Council to obtain that clearance certificate. Now, the purpose of the clearance certificate is basically to say that the seller, the current registered owner, has a fully paid up rates and taxes account. So that figure that the City Council basically provided us is a 60-day, or in some instances even a 4-month in advance estimate of what he needs to pay. So to obtain that clearance certificate, we need to pay that, and we pay it out of the funds of the seller. So the seller basically pays his own City Council rates and taxes account in advance, and then a clearance certificate is issued, which we need for purposes of transfer. Now, the reason why we deduct it from the seller is that all credits that then come back after date of transfer is then repaid to the seller. So eventually, the account will be squared off by the City Council, and anything in credit will then be refunded to the transferring attorney, which will then be paid over to the seller. We will then diarise our file or get it back from file away, and we will then allocate the payment and pay it back to the seller. But part of this process, and I've got one of these specific forms of the City Council, but part of the process is that we have to complete the new particulars of the purchaser, contact particulars, physical address, his bank account particulars, and the like. And we will then basically send that through on date of registration to notify the City Council that transfer of this property has now taken place and that there is a change in ownership. Now, the City Council needs to take this document with the necessary annexures, and they need to process the journals. They need to update their own records. So the responsibility to basically remove the old owner and add the new owner on the rates and taxes account is that of the City Council. And that's the reason why we send this information and document through to a designated email address. But the problem that we have is obviously one of service delivery and bureaucracy. So it's not always with the haste and speed required that this journal is done by the City Council. And that results in the fact that month 1 or 2 or 3 transpires or expires after the date of transfer, and the purchaser doesn't receive an account in his name, and therefore he reneges to pay. So then drastic steps needs to be taken. You need to contact the transferring attorney once again to say, listen, although transfer has taken place, you or we have not yet received our rates and taxes account so that we can follow it up. And that's the reason why we have also included additional services for the purchasers and sellers. We've got City Council runners that work on a contract basis who have much more contacts and better contacts than us ourselves with the City Council itself. Obviously, they charge an additional fee for purposes of it, but they ensure not only the transfer of the rates and taxes account, but they ensure the reconnection of the electricity and transfer of the electricity from the seller to the purchaser, and to ensure that the necessary journals are done at the City Council. So it is actually unfortunate that we, have to provide these as an additional service. One would actually like the City Council to do it straight away, and then these specific additional expenses wouldn't have been necessary. But I think if I was in the position of a purchaser, I would make use of a City Council runner at a minimal additional fee and ensure that my rates, taxes, and everything and the transfer of the relevant accounts take place timeously. Otherwise, it can get lost somewhere in file 13, as we always joke about it. But it can get lost, and it obviously has a detrimental effect, because 4, 5, 6 months after date of registration, you get surprised with a huge account when the journal is done, and suddenly you owe the city council 25 or 30,000 rand, which is unexpectable or unacceptable in any specific instance.
Yes, and I think lost in translation would be a good explanation. But the thing is, we always advise people, make sure your rates and taxes is on. Go online and register with your municipality. And also beware, we are not referring to your water and electricity account. We are referring to your rates account. That is a different account. Sometimes your water and electricity can be connected very quickly, and you can pay that thinking, well, right, I am paying my rates and taxes account. These are different accounts. If you open up that statement and it doesn't say rates and taxes or rates account, then you need to make sure that you get that connected, or you pay a little bit in an account every month, more or less what the agent have advised you what the rates and taxes of that property would be, so that when you eventually get the big bill, that you can pay that amount and not be left in the dark.
Yeah, Amore, that's very important. I think one has to understand that, we would like to blame someone in the process somewhere, someplace, but primarily it remains the seller and the purchaser's responsibility to ensure that these specific accounts are gradually handed over and transferred to the new owner. So with regards to the electricity, you obviously need to sign off or terminate your services with the city council as the seller on the occupation or the registration date, whichever you please. And then after that, reconnect. And a new deposit would obviously have to be paid by the purchaser. There's a specific form that has to be signed by both the seller and the purchaser simultaneously, and that is handed in with the city council and the deposit is paid. With regards to the rates and taxes, although there's a prescribed procedure, I think the red alarm should go on in the event where month 1 transpires or expires and you haven't received your rates and taxes account, and therefore you can take it for granted that the journal has not been processed by the city council. Recontact the transferring attorney, or if you have made use of the city council runner, obviously contact the city council runner and say, what's going on? Where is my proof of transfer of the account? Because ultimately, you will still, as purchaser, remain responsible for the payment of whatever is outstanding. And, like I said, city council is a bit of a bureaucracy. If you do not pay, they'll just immediately disconnect your electricity and water. They've got the right to do so, and they have done it in the past. So do not flaunt with that. It will obviously happen. And especially in this day and age when the city council is quite pedantic about funds outstanding.
And you will be left in the dark, and you will pay that reconnection fee. The thing is, what I want to emphasize is steps taken in the registration process is one has to end off at a 0 account with Tshwane, and that is for the seller's card. So you as a buyer will never start on the old debt that the seller had. You will now have a new account that will start on 0. The attorneys always do their parts, because registration cannot happen unless you have a 0 clearance certificate. A clearance certificate is one of the compulsory documents that need to be submitted to the deeds office. So that will never happen that you would start on someone else's debt. And then it will happen that you can request for them on day of registration, please supply me that connection that it has been done at Tshwane. And then it is 100% your responsibility, if you don't use a runner, to make sure that connection is done by you.
Correct. Our experience in the past, and like I said, being a bit of a bureaucracy is that, no normal working person, whether it be the seller or the purchaser, has got the time to go into the CBD and obviously stand in a queue and try and sort these accounts out. And therefore, to pay a city council runner that we can prescribe an additional fee to try and sort all of this out and provide you with the necessary proof is truly worth its weight in gold. So I can really advise that. They know who to speak to. They know obviously how to approach the system to make sure that the necessary journals are done. And my experience is that within a month, from date of registration, you will receive via email or whatever the medium is that you would like to receive your account. You would receive the updated journal, and you will take it henceforth and pay your necessary dues to the City Council.
Yes, and I think if you are stuck and you've got a crisis where they cut your power, that's the first person that you can call. So it's advisable, it's your responsibility, buyer. So be aware, this is one of the things that we always have. After 6 months, Johan, you and I have this many calls from the buyer stating they are cutting my power or they send me a final demand. So be aware that in that time frames that you've given, that this is done.
Correct. And it is just simply not normal not to make a payment or to receive an account for 6 months and then obviously be aggravated and try and blame the City Council. I think it's important that the responsibility to inquire what the status is remains the purchasers. You've got to remember, it's just obvious that you will pay rates and taxes on a monthly basis. And if you do not receive a bill for purposes of payment, you have to inquire with regards to that. Just in defense of the transferring attorneys, you've got to remember that we do hundreds of transfers on a daily basis, or not a daily basis, I wish, but on a monthly and yearly basis. So we've got a lot of files, and although we diarize those files, to finally sort them out and close them finally, it's just impossible to scrutinize all the City Council accounts of all purchases to make sure that they are timelessly sent out. We do not have access to those systems. Those journals are done behind the scenes by the City Council, and we take it for granted that if we send them this confirmation of registration, that they will do their work and they will process it. And therefore, the only gateway that will give us clearance as to whether it's done or not will be the purchaser to say, please note, I haven't received a specific bill for the past month or two. Please, can you investigate? Or then contact the runner, like I said, if you've made use of her services.
Yes, and Johan, and that's why we are making this videos, to empower people and educate them to know exactly what to ask when my transaction has registered, because ultimately it's your responsibility. It's not the responsibility of an attorney or an estate agent to make sure that this happened. The attorney made sure this happened on registration, but the journaling part and the part where the responsibility lies is with Tshwane, and they'll be ruthless. They'll just cut your electricity. So the one thing that I've seen as a side note where there is a lot of issues is the misconception where people have like a prepaid account where they are serviced with electricity and water by a different company than Tshwane. Then it tends to confuse them because they think automatically my rates and taxes are included there. So some of the sectional titles that I work on, some of those people, when we resell their properties, haven't received the rates and taxes and was well unaware of this for the past 2 years. Now they're sitting with an exuberant bill. And if they want to make an arrangement to pay that off, the answer is, do you want your property to register now, or do you want to pay that off, because that will then deliberately delay the contract?
That's a very important point that you make. For numerous years now, the billing of rates and taxes accounts for each and every sectional title unit in South Africa has equally been issued. It used to be in the past that you had a bulk account that was delivered to the body corporate, and the body corporate then divided the costs between the individual owners according to their participation quota in the sectional title scheme. However, that has been abandoned because it caused a lot of people to be disgruntled about the fact that he's got a bigger stand than I have, or whatever the case may be. So the City Council decided to individually bill each and every sectional title unit. So the fact that you pay impact or Protea meter readings for purposes of your water and your electricity, that is not to say that you are paying them all-inclusive rates and tax as well. So you've got to query that, and the City Council in your specific area will obviously provide you with a rates and taxes account, even though there is no consumables on that account, because that is paid separately via impact or whoever the meter readers might be. But it's very important to query those and make sure that you receive consumable accounts as well as your rates and taxes, because the rates and taxes portion is a tax that needs to be paid to the City Council. And they have got quite preferent claims against you if you do not pay that. So you don't want to run into that spot of bother.
So in a sectional title, no. If you're paying, you have to pay your levies and your rates and taxes and your electricity bill. So those are 3 things. And some of the complex, you also have to pay a water bill. So those are the 4 things very important that you need to pay. So don't forget about your rates and taxes.
Yeah. I would really advise, especially in the event of a sectional title scheme, as a last footnote, that any prospective buyer who's unknown or he doesn't actually know the internal workings of the body corporate, go to your trustee corps, find out exactly what types of accounts the registered owners receive, and make sure that you receive all of them on a monthly basis so that you service all of them and don't leave any of them behind.
Yes. Thank you, Johan, for your time. I really appreciate it.
Only a pleasure. Keep well.
You too.